Hey guys, my name's Ryan, and welcome to this video series covering version control. In this series, we're going to be going over a bunch of different things, going over a high-level overview of what version control is. We're then going to take a look at some of the different types of models of version control that are out there, and then we're going to be playing around with a system called Subversion, which follows one of those particular models of version control. Now, the first thing I want to do is give you a basic definition of what version control is. Version control is a system that allows you to manage changes in computer files and allows easier collaboration between multiple people. Now just keep this definition in the back of your mind, and as we continue our discussion about version control, it should become clearer to you. Okay, next, let's go over the different types of version control systems that are out there. Now, you've probably used version control in one form or another without even realizing it. And that's renaming files. Mainly renaming files is basically one version of version control. So let's say you have a website and you want to create a new home page, but you don't want it to be easily accessible from the public, but you still want to be able to view it before you push your changes live. You may take your index.html file, copy it, rename it to index2.html, make your changes, and then view it. And that essentially is a form of version control. And then when you're done with your changes to the index2, you may want to keep your current index file because for whatever reason, if you need to revert quickly, you want to have that file available. So you may rename that to index.html.bak for backup, and then rename your index2.html to index.html. So now that's the page that is visible to the users of your website. And that again is another form of version control. Now, there are also some applications that automatically create backup files for you. So when you go into a file and edit it, and you save it, there's an automatic backup file that's created for you by the application. And again, that's another version of version control. Instead of manually renaming the file, the application's doing it for you. And you also notice a lot of applications have a undo and redo functionality, and that again is another form of version control, because the application in the background is keeping track of the changes you make, and it's allowing you to undo or redo those changes. Now, the next type of model of version control is the server-client model. And popular versions of that are CSV and Subversion. And the client-server model is basically there's a server that stores everything that's controlled in the version control, and then you have your client, and you can have multiple clients connect to this one server in order to pull and exchange data with the files in the version control. And then the next most popular type of version control model is the distributed model. And that works a little bit differently, where there isn't technically a single server that stores all of the code. Basically all the users have their own repositories, but we'll get more into that a little bit in depth later. And a popular application of distributed is Git. Now you may be asking yourself, why would you want to use version control? Well, there are a few different reasons why version control is very popular. Now, the first thing that's very good with version control is backups. Anytime you commit a change, a backup of the previous version is automatically stored. So if we take our index.html file, for example, we go in and we start making changes to the index and we commit our changes to the server, we don't actually have to create a backup of what was previously there, because the version control is going to automatically store the previous version of that file. So it allows you to very easily be able to go back to any previous version of one particular file, since the file was committed to the version control system. Now, another very good thing about version control is synchronization. It allows multiple users can work on the same file at the same time in an easier manner. Now, if you have two people who are working on the same file, without version control, both of them are going to be working on their own versions of the file, and then both of them are going to have to try to collaborate and take a look at each file to figure out how we're going to merge this together. With version control, merging is a lot easier. Now, version control doesn't mash all changes together. There are going to be times where there are going to be conflicts if two people are working at the same exact spot on a file at the same time, but it still allows for a lot easier collaboration or synchronization between people working on same files. Now, another useful feature of version control is tracking. You are able to track who made what changes and when they were made. And this is useful if you're working in a file and you see something that looks odd to you, you don't understand exactly what's happening there. You can take a look at the history of that particular file, see who made the changes. You can see what changes they made, any potential comments that they might have put in that might help you understand it. And if you still don't understand it, you can actually get in contact with that person since you know who made those changes, and you can just discuss with them exactly what you need to figure out. And then one of the last big features of using version control is sandboxing and merging. With version control, you are able to take a copy of the main project, work on it in isolation while your main project continues along. So if you want to test some sort of new feature to your project, but you don't want to disturb what the other people are working on and let them continue with the main project, you can take a copy of that main project and you can work on it in isolation without anyone affecting you or you affecting anyone else. Now, after you're done making your changes, if your changes don't work, you can just delete that version of the project and the main project is still there and it's still being worked on. But if your changes do work, that's when you're going to be able to take your version of the main project and merge it back in with the main branch, or the main branch of the project, and then you'll be able to incorporate all of the new changes that have happened while you were working in isolation. The last thing I want to discuss is common uses of version control. One common use of version control is software development. With software development using multiple programmers, version control helps a lot with collaboration and synchronization. Allows multiple programmers to work on the same code base, and it resolves a lot of issues with merging files. System administrators also use version control. It's probably more for Linux administrators, where they can keep configuration files in a version control system, so that way if they make a change to a configuration, something breaks, they can quickly and easily get back to a known working configuration file for whatever system they screwed up. And then there are many other uses for version control besides software development and system administration, including but not limited to documentation, 2D artwork like textures, and 3D artwork like models. Now in the next video we're going to go over some basic terminology that you're going to need to understand when talking about version control. Thanks.